I am not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality?
I wish I could keep telling you that our mission in life is connecting people, but it isn't. We just want to predict your future behaviors.
It's incredible how far deepfake technology has come, with deepfakes rapidly becoming easier to create and harder to distinguish from the real thing. That's impressive, but it's also very worrying. Before we know it, we may find ourselves in a post-truth world, where seeing is no longer believing because most digital material is either manipulated or generated by technology. In just a couple of years from now, it may be very difficult or perhaps even impossible for us to determine what is real and what is not. What will that mean for journalism, the legal system, elections, democracy, and society? Bart van der Sloot, who is a legal scholar and philosopher from the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society, warns that deepfake tech may disrupt the world as we know it in the very near future. So what threats are we up against as deepfakes continue to become more convincing and more common? And is it possible to tackle these harms before the deepfake future is here? Let's find out.
This should be on a political agenda and on a societal agenda.
Deepfakes are AI-powered fake images, video, or audio clips that are extremely realistic. Typically, it involves placing one person's face onto the body of another, like this deepfake version of Tom Cruise, which took TikTok by storm and quickly racked up millions of views. Videos of deep Tom Cruise playing golf or dramatically announcing that he's running for president seem pretty harmless, and there are lots of other funny deepfakes out there. But some viral deepfake videos are a lot less innocent, like a recent Russian deepfake video of President Zelensky telling Ukrainians to put down their weapons and surrender. Ever since deepfakes blew up a few years ago, so did concerns over their ability to disrupt politics, to scam people out of money, and to spread a new form of violence against women. In fact, that's how it all started, with non-consensual porn. The deepfakes wave began on the online forum Reddit, where one anonymous user going by the pseudonym Deepfakes uploaded fake porn videos of female celebrities. What started with a solo hobbyist quickly grew into a whole community of Redditors sharing face-swapped porn, when another anonymous user shared a desktop app on Reddit that allowed anyone with a computer to create deepfake videos. Reddit banned the community, but the genie was already long out of the bottle by then. Deepfake technology took off, first in pornography and then across the rest of the internet. Today, deepfakes are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they're popping up everywhere, quickly giving rise to a synthetic society where all things digital should be doubted. Bart van der Sloot recently led a study on deepfakes commissioned by the Dutch Ministry of Justice. Together with other researchers from Tilburg University, he examined if the current legal regime is enough to tackle the harms of deepfake technology, and if not, what can be done to prevent a deepfake dystopia from taking hold of our world? In this video, we dive into the good, the bad, and the future of deepfake technology with Bart van der Sloot. Let's start with the positive. Can deepfakes be used for good?
There are actually quite a few benefits of this technology. So you can imagine retail sector, for example. You can show a deep fake of you wearing new clothes or new glasses, etc. There are techniques in, for example, police investigations that can revive a criminal scene for a jury or a judge to see and kind of walk through the environment. You can use deepfake pictures of children, for example, for catching pedophiles. You can do business Skype calls with foreign colleagues, for example, Chinese colleagues who speak Chinese. Not only can it translate the Chinese to Dutch or English automatically, it can also sync the lip movement so that you really think that person is talking your language. There are movies made even with dead actors, and this is a possibility more broadly, that you have a deep fake of a person doing stunts, doing dangerous stunts, or a politician that speaks out to minority groups in their own language. So there's a whole range of types and uses which are really positive. And of course, satire. I mean, there are many really funny deepfakes out there. Nicolas Cage playing in even more movies than he already does, like in Lord of the Rings and what have you. So there are many good and positive applications of deepfakes.
From police work to online shopping and from cinema to satire, deepfake tech can be useful in many areas of society. But Bart van der Sloot and his colleagues write in their report that the dangers of deepfakes clearly exceed the potential benefits in nature and severity. So when does the use of deepfake tech become problematic?
It becomes problematic for two reasons. One is like you can do illegal or immoral things with it. So identity theft, for example. There have been many examples where a CEO appears to be calling an employee and says, transfer €1 million, or interference in elections. So fake news being spread through deepfakes with the attempt of spreading rumors of misinformation, therewith influencing elections. For example, in the United States, this has happened. So these are like specific things you can do with deepfakes for all these established criminal or immoral activities. And there's a second thing, and that's more broader, that the predictions is that in about 4 or 5 years' time, more than 90% of all online content will be manipulated. Not all like big deep fake where a person is saying things or doing things that he didn't or she didn't do. Sometimes also small manipulations like skin tone being equalized. But even there, sometimes this matters. So for example, the police is worried because sometimes they need to identify a suspect on the basis of a digital material. Or dermatologists do an online consult and need to see the skin perfectly. So even these minor manipulations might happen, might be significant in specific circumstances. But the broader thing is, of course, that in a few years' time, we might live in fact, a post-truth society, where it's very difficult to impossible to establish each and every time with each picture, with each audio fragment, with each video, satellite signal, what have you. Is this manipulated, and if so, how, and does it matter? So this in time may jeopardize like broader systems in society. Courts judging on evidence. How do you ensure that the evidence that is presented in court is actually correct? Journalism, the same. How do you know for sure that what you are reporting on is actually true? Democracy, the same. There are many, many worries in Western countries, but also in third world countries, that Russia, that China, etc., is trying to influence concrete decisions, concrete election results, etc. And last but not least, the position of women in society. Until now, about 95% of all deepfakes are non-consensual porn.
The victims of this type of deepfake abuse are mainly women and girls, from female celebrities to ordinary teenagers. Girls are growing up knowing that at any moment explicit images of them might surface, even if those images were never actually taken. Websites dedicated to deepfake porn are crawling with fake videos of outspoken female leaders like Greta Thunberg and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. This disturbing AI-powered form of abuse deepens the violence women endure online, making the digital world an even more hostile and unsafe environment for them.
So this is the broader worry. What does that do for example, female politicians? Do they even want to go into politics, or do they want to stay there if it's so easy to make a deepfake porn video of them? Or with young school children in their puberty, for example. It's so easy to make a porn video of a young girl, and even if the class knows that to be a deepfake, and even if she knows it's a deepfake, still it might do something to her social position and her perception of herself. So these are kind of the two things that we worry about, the specific uses for detrimental purposes, but also the broader issues of society as a whole. But the biggest worry is that everyone can lay their hands on this technology. So you could say in specific circumstances it's good, and we discussed the deepfakes for positive use, and there are many. And mostly these are for professional uses. So for the film industry, or for the retail sector, or for the police, or the medical domain. These are all relatively closed environments where it's clear who is using the technology for what purpose. Where it becomes potentially more dangerous is if everyone, literally everyone, can access deepfake technology. And that's already the case.
Deepfake apps and websites allow anyone to create fake videos in just a few clicks. And there are countless tutorials out there on how to use high-quality deepfake software. Experts predict that within a few years' time, the advanced techniques that are now used by professionals will be available to anyone with a smartphone or a computer. That means we'll soon live in a world where everyone can create ultra-realistic fakes. Can trust and truth survive in such a future?
What experts say is it's not only that like one deepfake video is produced of like, I don't know, a general declaring war on Russia. But it's the new technologies create a whole fake environment, if you will. And so there's a deepfake video, fake Twitter accounts are produced that discuss the video, a fake CNN report is made on the video. So you create like a whole environment where it's no longer possible to say, okay, one source is no source, 5 sources might also be no source. So this is the problem, and so our own eyes and our own ears won't help because these are so realistic. The more contextual approach is not working because there might be a whole context of fake news. And the AI, there are AI detection techniques, but they often only are able to filter out about 65% right now, and experts say this will decline over time, about 50% being able to be filtered out. And these techniques sometimes just clearly say, okay, this is a deep fake, but often they say, well, there is a realistic chance that this is a deep fake, like, I don't know, 76% likelihood of this being a deep fake. And then even you don't know what has been faked, and is that relevant for the item we're discussing as a journalist or as evidence in court. So this is the bigger concern, that there is already a trend, of course, towards misinformation. So there is already fake news and fake media without deep fakes, and this will spiral, like it will spiral negative comments towards women online. So there's all these kind of trends that are already ongoing, that will be stimulated by deepfake technology.
Policing deepfake abuse is complicated, leaving victims without justice. It's not that there aren't any laws that protect against the harms of deepfakes, but enforcing those laws is difficult under the current legal regime.
We basically have in place rules, laws, etc., prohibiting specific abuses of deepfake technology. So making non-consensual porn is of course prohibited. Influencing election through misinformation is prohibited. Identity theft is prohibited, etc. So all these specific use cases are prohibited. That's not where the primary concern or primary gap is.
Like with other new technologies, the difficulty of keeping society safe from deepfake harm doesn't arise from a lack of rules and regulations, but rather from the way we regulate.
And that is what is called ex post regulation. So we set technology free, we place no restrictions on it, and there are exceptions, but in principle we do not check, for example, deepfake before it's put online. It's only afterwards that we check, okay, this is non-consensual porn, and then you have either as a citizen, you have a right to go to a court or to an internet platform, or the public prosecutor or the data protection authority can take action. The problem with this is it's too late, right? The damage has already been done. How, if it's true that so many deepfakes or manipulated media will be out there, who has time and energy to check that? DPAs are already highly overburdened, public prosecutors as well. Citizens, you don't have the time and power to go against every deepfake. You don't know even, like as a woman, that a deepfake porn is being placed on a fake dodgy website somewhere. So this is a problem that it's becoming quasi impossible to enforce the in itself good rules in this environment where so many media are manipulated. This is the bigger problem we have identified. Is really what we call like an enforcement gap. There are rules in principle and theoretically, by and large, they would be sufficient, but the way they are regulated and oversight and enforcement is regulated, it's highly questionable whether this will fly. And this stands in a line with a number of research projects which we did at the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society. So the Netherlands is kind of the leading government in the world on what is called horizontal privacy. So you have the typical vertical privacy, the government vis-a-vis the citizen. You have diagonal privacy, which is the citizen against like the bigger firms like the Google, Facebook, etc. But you also have horizontal privacy. Citizens with spy products, with drones, what have you, kind of spying on each other. And so the Dutch government has issued already 4 bigger studies, which we all did as the Tilburg Institute for Law, Technology and Society, on how to regulate these specific techniques. And Deepfake report is part of that bigger project. And actually each report concluded this point. Like the real problem is the enforcement. And the same, for example, goes with spy products. And this is the parallel we also draw. So some of these spy products are explicitly designed and offered for illegal purposes, like a mini camera that you can hide in the cap of a shampoo bottle, and so it says like, okay, if you have a date, you can secretly film your date in the shower. Now you can't say that all uses of that mini camera will be illegal. I mean, it's perfectly possible to envisage legitimate ones, but you already sense that if you offer it and make it like this, by and large all, or by far most use cases will be immoral, illegal, etc. And the same could be said for deepfakes. And it's still relatively new technology, so we won't know how it will develop. But at least when citizens use it, it's mostly for non-consensual porn, for identity theft, for other negative purposes. And the only kind of positive use case by citizens, so not by professional parties, the entertainment industry, retail industry, but by citizens, is satire.
What is certain is that something must be done about the deepfake threat. The question is what? Bart van der Sloot and his colleagues have identified a number of regulatory options. Let's take a closer look at some of those options. We'll start with the most radical solution, which is to ban or restrict the use of deepfake tech by citizens.
It's very controversial to prohibit or set restrictions on technology, but you could say, okay, if we know that more than 95%, maybe 99% of all uses of deepfakes technology by citizens will be for illegal purposes, knowing that it's quasi impossible to do the enforcement and oversight, why not restrict it? There might be an argument for it precisely because of the enforcement problem and precisely because, at least for the consumer market, the predictions are that by far most use cases will be for detrimental illegal purposes. This is the argument in favor. But there are many arguments against as well. Citizens want to have access to it. There are positive use cases. Satire is a big part of our Western world and how we use freedom of speech. It's useful for critiquing, for example, politicians. It's funny. Argument against is also it doesn't work, prohibition. Like there is always a provider in China that offers a deepfake technology. And an argument against it is it doesn't tackle the underlying problem. So the underlying problem is the negative attitude towards women, or the spread of false information. Like these are the underlying problems. So you can take away one technology for doing that, but then people will find another technology.
Another regulatory option is to focus more on what people do behind their computers in their own homes.
Right now, in the private sphere, very minimal rules apply. Both criminal law and privacy law are really not applicable or only marginally so. So suppose I sit behind my computer and make a non-consensual porn of, I don't know, my neighbor. But I don't spread it and I don't make it public. Privacy law doesn't apply, and mostly criminal law will also not apply. So this already brings like a moral question. Should that not be prohibited? Is it not intrinsically criminal to make non-consensual porn? We don't say it is, but it is something to consider. And the second thing is, this actually ties into the enforcement gap. Because if you do not control what people are doing behind their own computer, then people are allowed to make whatever type of deepfake out there, store like thousands of deepfakes on their computer, and then with one click on the button, spread it out to the internet. Then laws and regulatory action comes in, but it's already too late. So this might again be an argument in favor of trying to regulate the private sphere as well.
For privacy law, there's another good reason to consider this option. Currently, the so-called household exemption applies in the private sphere, which basically means that people are allowed to process data within their homes or on their personal computers, as long as they don't make anything public. The exemption is a remnant of a time when keeping an address book with phone numbers and addresses was usually the only form of data processing that went on within the home. that has obviously changed. In the age of the internet and social media, the boundary between what is kept private and what is made public can be crossed with a single click. So perhaps the time is right for reconsidering the exemption.
On the other hand, again, there are very good arguments against it. Do we really want a government, like a big brother government, that is going to infiltrate our private sphere and what we do behind our computer? You could also say, so what if someone makes a porn video, people make drawings, so should that really be regulated? And a second argument against is, wouldn't this actually deepen the enforcement gap? Because how in earth is the public prosecutor or the DPA going to inspect what people are doing in their homes? So again, there are good arguments on both sides.
Another option would be to create rules for deepfakes of deceased persons and for people that don't actually exist.
One of the gaps we really identified, so mostly we say law has all the principles and rules it needs, but one of the real gaps is on deceased persons and on fully AI-generated people.
Deepfakes make it possible to revive the dead and to bring non-existent people to life. Cleopatra can teach history classes, Picasso can give museum tours, you can talk to a loved one that has passed away or even say a few words at your own funeral. And the police can use fake undercover agents to infiltrate criminal networks. The question is, do we really want that? Should public institutions be stimulating the fake environment that deepfakes create by inviting Cleopatra as a guest lecturer or a museum guide? And what about more controversial deepfakes of the dead or non-existent, like porn videos of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar? Or the use of fake child pornography to catch or treat pedophiles?
You can see all kinds of uses there, both for good, both for bad. And then the question is, where do you draw the line? What is good, what is not good? I, for example, wouldn't want to speak at my own funeral. But should I write that down in my testament? Do I then have sufficient protection? It's unclear right now. So there's where we think a real political debate should happen about the desirability of additional rules. And I think it would be good to set out rules specifying kind of what is allowed. And I think, for example, for the police, it helps them if we set clear rules and they know what they can and cannot do. And the same for people that do not want to speak at their own funeral, for example. It helps if they know, like, okay, in principle, this is not allowed unless I consent, or if I don't want to, I should register somewhere that my pictures cannot be used for deepfake purposes, for example.
Another regulatory option described in the report is to develop laws to protect public figures like politicians from deepfakes and to combat the spread of disinformation through deepfakes, while also keeping freedom of expression safe. That's a tricky one because it's a difficult balancing act.
So we have a number of advices also for the government on the freedom of speech. And by and large there is a framework out there and it's good. It allows for many speech forms, but it also sets restrictions when it violates privacy rights, reputation rights of people, or, for example, when misinformation does harm. What could be considered is to set stricter rules for the protection of public figures. Again, this is a highly controversial issue because we have as a principle, and I think as a good principle, that actually we can say more about public persons than we can say about non-public persons. And in a lot of countries in the world, of course, this is reversed. It is important to be able to mock, to ridicule, etc. people in power, because that is what is needed in terms of contra-powering, kinds of checks and balances. But again, it could be argued that right now it's going quite far, and we already see numbers of people willing to take public office go down, especially again with women. And so one of the problems right now is that the framework for judging these types of conflicts is pretty vague. So you have the freedom of expression on the one hand and the right to privacy on the other hand. And how a conflict between those two rights should be seen in concrete case is always again judged ex post. And the criteria that are used for that are quite fluid in a way. And so you don't know in advance either as a speech act person, so I make a deepfake video of a politician, I don't know precisely like what are the rules that apply to me, and the politician in question doesn't know precisely like, okay, do I stand a chance if I go to court with this? So the extreme examples, of course, are clear, but most are kind of in the gray zone. So it could be argued that it might be worthwhile adopting like additional standards. Like this is what we view as either best practices or concrete rules, what you can and cannot do, for example, in terms of sexual explicit things or racial remarks you let a politician make. And the other thing is for misinformation. So right now, if you spread misinformation, that is prohibited if it causes harm, either to a specific person or to a broader societal issue. But oftentimes it's very difficult to draw the line, the causal relationship between that misinformation and the harm. Like in specific cases, it's doable. But when I spread misinformation about the COVID crisis, for example, one of the harms might be that I don't know, the vaccination, people willing to get vaccinated dwindles. But is that due to my deep fake? I mean, it might be, but the causal relationship is very difficult to draw. There are some countries that have adopted rules on spreading misinformation as such. Good, you could say, given all these examples, but of course also very bad, because you have a government then saying what is true and what is not. And in our Western society, probably the government wouldn't abuse that power, but you see which countries are the first to adopt laws against misinformation that are totalitarian regimes, because they can use that to say any critique on the regime is misinformation. So yeah, again, it's choosing between two evils.
One specific place where deepfakes are causing trouble is in the courtroom. Can we prevent a future where judges are misled by fake evidence?
The basic of evidence in courts right now is that you are free to submit any evidence. And the judge will take that evidence to be true and authentic unless there are contraindications. If the predictions that in time more than 90% of all online digital content will be manipulated comes true, the question is, should that not be reversed? Shouldn't we have as a ground principle, all evidence is presumed not to be authentic unless some kind of verification takes place? So there are several ways of which you could ensure that. I mean, the reason for doing so is clear. You don't want a judge sentencing someone on the basis of deep fake material or acquitting someone again on the basis of fake material, or have a whole discussion on whether something is fake or not.
Deepfakes are already making their way into the courtroom. Sometimes there's no doubt that a piece of evidence is a deep fake, like in one custody battle where a woman tried to discredit the father of her child by submitting fake audio evidence of him being violent. But there are also cases in which it's not clear whether or not the evidence is doctored. For instance, when this happened last year.
Rafael Spone's arrest in March last year made big headlines. She's the mom accused of creating deepfake videos to trash her daughter's rivals on the cheerleading squad.
A mom arrested, accused of making fake videos.
Her daughter Allie was a cheerleader on the Victory Vipers, one of the most competitive cheerleading squads in Pennsylvania. Last year, several parents were sent videos and anonymous texts complaining about their daughter's behavior on social media. This one appears to show a cheerleader vaping. Prosecutors called it a deepfake.
That case went to court, and then a whole discussion on is this actually a deepfake or not took place. And experts disagree. It's very difficult to establish. So this is the bigger danger again, that we are moving towards a system where we just don't know or have to issue on probability. So this requires, again, more looking towards contextual information, maybe not only saying one source is no source, but two sources are no sources. But also thinking about how to do an ex ante check on evidence that is introduced in court. And you could do that in various ways, which are all quite difficult actually. So one is sending every piece of evidence to an independent institute. We already in the Netherlands, but many institutes have that for DNA analysis. They also do often some kind of digital forensics. So we might require each evidence first to be sent to such an institute, that they assess it on authenticity, and only then send it back to the court.
That would mean that all photographic, video, and audio evidence would first have to be submitted to a verification process before it's introduced in court. To do that for all court cases, from criminal cases to disputes between neighbors over fences, would be extremely cost and time intensive. In fact, it might be practically impossible. And even if it would somehow be doable, a verification system like that would not give 100% certainty about whether or not the evidence is really authentic. In most cases, it will only give a probability of something being a deep fake. There seems to be no easy solution to the looming deepfake crisis. Every potential option comes with costs and consequences.
Like, this is the thing I'm trying to say. It's so difficult. There are very, very difficult or negative consequences of this technology. But every solution or every regulation also has very clear problematic outcomes. And so it's not for us to say as a lawyer or as an academic, this is what should be done. But what we are highly convinced of is that this should be on the political agenda and on societal agenda. There should be a broad debate about what type of society do we actually want. Do we want a more restrictive government, setting rules on freedom of speech, entering our private domain, setting prohibitions on technology use? Okay, this might be a problem. We get a more totalitarian, or kind of we move towards a more restrictive world. Or do we say, no, we allow it? But then probably what will happen is a post-truth society where democracy, where the rule of law, where the media, etc. are at stake. And so this is not an easy answer, but it is so urgent and so important that we should discuss it elaborately, both in society and in politics.
The researchers are very clear that the regulatory options they have identified are options and not recommendations. But I did wonder how Bart, as the lead researcher and as a legal scholar and philosopher, thinks we should be moving forward.
I think there is a debate going on broader in Europe about the regulation of technology. And we come from an environment that has been dominated by American ethics in a way. And this is an ethics of technology should be free, you should be free, and only like the concrete examples where things go wrong should be targeted. And there is a broader discussion about, for example, facial recognition, whether that should be allowed to be used by anyone or by the police, for example. Should we not set more restrictions on technology? This is also one thought we had with the spy products. Why do we want spy products on the market? Like, there is kind of an idée fixe of like technology should be available, but why? Maybe we can also set some limits. And it was interesting because we interviewed for this study quite a number of experts from Europe, from Asia, from America, from Canada. And quite a number still made this argument, like, okay, but it's not the technology that does harm. Technology is neutral, but it's people that do harm. And this is not true, I would say, as a philosopher. If we know one thing, philosophy of technology is that technology is never neutral. It's designed for a specific purpose. It can be used for a specific purpose and not for other purposes. Like a gun is specifically designed for wounding or killing a person. And of course, you can also try to hammer a nail with a gun, but peeling an onion would already be more difficult. There is a design implicit in the technology. And there are also negative and positive use cases implicit in the design, such as with a mini camera that can be hidden in the cap of a shampoo bottle. I mean, for by far most legitimate use cases of a camera, a bigger camera suffices. So this is also for the deep fake, like it's kind of the NRA argument, like guns don't kill people, people kill people. No, the gun helps, and it's also for deep fake. And if you know that so many deepfakes are used for example, non-consensual porn, and again, we need to be hesitant because it's only a new technique, and so maybe things will change. But if this remains so, some people we spoke to during the interviews also said the use for non-consensual porn should be in the definition of deepfakes, because that is what it's used for. This is its main use, like a definition of a table is that you sit on it or can eat on it or something like that. These are the regular uses. It's not that you normally use a table to sleep on, for example. You could, but it's not normal, so you don't put it in the definition. But when more than 95% of the uses of a specific technology is for a specific purpose, then this should be included. This is the broader question I have. Should we not move past that narrow conception of technology as being neutral? Technology is never neutral. It's designed for certain purposes.
However we decide to tackle the deepfake threat, we have to do something, and we have to do it fast.
We wrote this report for the Dutch government, and I think it's important to see that there are already quite a number of governments in the world that are taking action. The United States has already witnessed what fake news can do, for example, in political campaigns, in democratic elections. France is taking action on misinformation. China is taking action on deepfakes. The UN has called for regulation. Europol has set out a big report on deepfakes and its dangers. So there is a general sentiment of like, we need to urgently take action. And I think for many countries, the Netherlands included, but many countries in Europe, we need to be way more alert on this. And we should adopt legislation soon and not in 3 or 4 years, because then we might already be in that post-truth world. So we should do it now. this year.